Oh, the goose is loose. Thanks to the fun of the OGL fiasco last year, alongside the fact that there's simply more eyes than ever on the TTRPG space, and there's an abundance of creative people in this space, there's a hell of a lot of really exciting alternatives to D&D that are upcoming, just released, or old hidden gems people simply need to hear more about. I'm not letting my hair derail this video again. Before we jump into anything, this video was sponsored by DC20, but we'll get into them a little bit later on. It really wouldn't be a D&D alternatives video if I didn't mention Pathfinder. D&D and Pathfinder, the Coke and Pepsi of high fantasy role-playing games. And I drink everything. I'm still really upset that I got my core rulebook so damaged, and now all I have to show for this is the beginner box. But hey, this thing's pretty good as well. Look, I know you've probably heard everything there is to hear about Pathfinder. It's D&D with slightly more rules. It's got the same D20 system. The races and classes are pretty much identical. Yeah. Can you imagine I just left it there and ended the video? Yes, from the surface, both do look incredibly similar, and they kind of are. Pathfinder is a direct outgrowth of D&D 3.5, so they should look similar. It's important to note, I never played D&D 3.5, and I never played Pathfinder 1st edition either. I came in right after the second release, and by the sounds of it, for a very good reason. From everything I've experienced, 2nd edition Pathfinder really isn't that much more complex than 5th edition D&D, but that's probably not as fun to argue about on the internet. Yes, there are more rules and more complex systems, but just like 5th edition D&D, you don't have to indulge in all of them if you don't want to. There's always going to be min-max players in roleplay games who love those kind of things, and then there's going to be the group of people who want to make a bunch of fairies and elves and flirt with their friends. What is this? Where did you come from? Who is your father? I think the general part of Pathfinder that scares people away is there's more things that you can record, keep, and take note of and do more math on. And someone who's not very good at math, that is a little bit intimidating. I feel the issue is most of the time people get to that point and then kind of take a U-turn and don't learn anything else about the system. But Pathfinder's got so much more that it offers. Because of all of these rules, there's a lot more flexibility within the constraints of them to customize your characters in regards to how you model them in combat, how you can model and make their magic systems work. It's really in-depth and awesome. Also, I feel like this doesn't get enough credit. Pathfinder's action system in combat is like pure genius. If you go down the route of just utilizing Pathfinder's pre-written adventures, because from my experience and my lack of confidence in the system so far, I don't feel too confident in my abilities to homebrew in it. The pre-written adventures are incredible, and I think outside of a couple of D&D ones, they're consistently better across the board. Look, it's definitely not for everyone, and it's a very divisive point in the RPG community, but if you and your players derive joy engaging in the rules and strategic play, or just want to try a different system, I really couldn't recommend giving it a try more. It's an underappreciated gem, and I think you can play both. Although I think I've pissed off everyone now. Also, from a couple of conversations I've had with other content creators, the 2nd edition, which again, I've thankfully only played, really takes leaps and bounds in making sure the entire system is digestible for a new player. So they're actively working on making it more approachable. So why don't you mix a bit of Coke with your Pepsi? No one's going to do that. That's stupid. On the opposite end of something like Pathfinder, you've got Dungeon Crawl Classics, a super streamlined fantasy RPG that I absolutely adore. I'll be very upfront in saying if it wasn't for Bob Wellbuilder's incredible video on this book and this system, I would have never heard about this, so I'll leave a link to that in the description because it's going to do a much better job at explaining why this is so fun than I ever could, because I don't even really understand what words mean when I say them. My favorite part of DCC, which it doesn't explicitly say in the book anywhere, is that there's a huge emphasis on it being kind of fun and goofy and kind of memey, honestly, which is exactly how I like to enjoy my role-playing games. The biggest catalyst of this is that there's a huge emphasis on randomization rather than memorization. I'm not someone who necessarily ever takes their characters too seriously in TTRPGs, and the fun of character creation in DCC is whether or not your character lives their first few encounters, so there's not a heavy emphasis or need for really complex or in-depth backstories, because the harsh reality is your character might not live from the first time they're attacked. Because of this, you're kind of actively building their backstory just as they survive encounters. You start at level 0 with very high mortality rates, meaning you will die lots in very fun and memorable ways, and then you get the joy of rolling up a new character and doing that all again. One part that I absolutely adore is that magic in this game is dangerous, not just for the recipient, but for the actual spellcaster as well. For example, a wizard may critically fail a spell that they're trying to cast and then corrupt themselves, turning their limbs into tentacles. The first adventure for this game kind of perfectly encapsulates how it should be run because it's for levels 0 to 1 and it's designed for 15 to 20 characters, indicating that a fair few of them are gonna die. If you're playing with 4 players, they should all expect to have to randomize 4 new ones as they're going through it. You'll make new ones, you'll laugh at their traits, and they'll probably die as well. It's so much fun. From all of this, it should really go without saying, if you're really into your roleplay heavy kind of RPGs, this may not be the perfect game for you because there's a huge element of risk associated with each of your characters that just may not be worth the time investment that you spend on creating a complex and in-depth character. That's not saying you can't do it, but they're just probably gonna die. The only slight annoyance that springs to mind with this system is that you need to buy a Xochi dice set, which are really unique dice, like your D3s, D5s, D7s, and so on and so forth. But if you're a little dice goblin, congratulations, you have a valid excuse to buy more to play this. And then we've got Daggerheart. Just relax for a second. I am well aware of how similar Daggerheart is to D&D. But this is much more of a just dipping your toes into something slightly different, so just bear with me for a minute. For those unfamiliar, Daggerheart is D&D famed Critical Role and Darrington Press's take on a new high fantasy TTRPG that has a high emphasis on longer term campaigns and character progression, which kinda makes sense with the whole Critical Role nature of things. And yes, all of the classes seem to be near identical replicates of what already exists in D&D, just with slightly different names, except Seraphs are pretty damn cool. And yes, all of the playable ancestries also exist in D&D, except for my beloved Fungrel, which are just mushroom people, and the Samaya, because it's about time you could play as a monkey in a fantasy game. It really doesn't separate itself from the D&D roots and formula or setting, but it's really not trying to. I mean, Critical Role exists because of D&D. Why would they go and make a system that their audience can't relate to at all? So enough of all that. Here's what I like about Daggerheart. There's just a lot more options at level 1. You've got more unique subclass features that you already have access to, and more domain abilities that you can optionally choose and go down that route. Also, when I played it with my players, we had a lot of fun with the duality dice, which generate hope and fear on every single roll in the game, which either used as a resource for the players or for my benefit for really cool and unique interactions. Admittedly, it's a lot more to track and manage, and I really hope they introduce some kind of peripheral that helps you stay on top of all those things, but we had a lot of fun with it. There's also mechanics like stress, custom skills, unique custom paths for when you level up. There's the tag team and combo moves was so much fun. Not so much for me because they were kind of annihilating stuff I was throwing at them, but they're really cool and I wish they were more present in other systems. There's also improvised turn order, which I personally didn't love. I just felt it was a bit messy, but it opens up a lot of opportunities for teamwork and collaboration and talking through what you're going to do. I think it's a bit hit and miss with most people, but that's just my views on it. Where this system really shines is that it has a heavy emphasis on drama, which, I mean, again, Critical Role. Are we surprised? The entire system's built around the progression of your character and the journey they're going through. And there's a lot of questions you have to answer from level 1. Well, you don't have to. I think they're kind of optional because it's a lot. Your character seems to be, through some of the prompting questions it asks that are very like near-death experience based, and their love and betrayal. So I feel like it's a lot of questions and in-depth backstory to be having as like a level 1 unpowerful person, but the options there for your beautifully complex, fictitious work of art to really thrive and shine in this setting. The only bane of my existence when trying to run this bad boy was your boy doesn't have a printer and is incredibly lazy and stingy, so obviously a lot of what is available for Daggerheart is only available online, and I could, now that I'm thinking about it retroactively, I could have just got everyone to open up like PDFs, but I hand rewrote everything from the PDF onto blank pieces of paper. Oh god, that's a waste of time. To me, the most exciting thing about Daggerheart is it's still in development. We've just got Daggerheart 1.4.2 just drop? I don't know, but it's going to continuously grow, and I'm really excited to see the potential of what this turns into. They're actively taking in a lot of feedback and making a lot of changes, which is really exciting and refreshing to see. So who knows where it'll be in a year's time. Also, ribbits are just aesthetically cute as hell in this game. As I flagged up front, this video is sponsored by DC20, and I had the privilege of doing a lot of early playtesting for this bad boy. And again, your boy doesn't have a printer, so just imagine I'm holding something. And with that, I had a hell of a lot of fun with it. It still feels very familiar, and it's clear where it got its inspiration from, and it's still a high fantasy setting, but offers a lot of innovative and intuitive design features to the system. For one, character creation is more open and customizable than ever with its class and ancestry systems. And coming from somebody who likes to push the absolute limits of stupidity when it comes to creating characters, I never really had any trouble fitting the monstrous molds of my thoughts into this system. A 4-point action system that lets their players customize their turns in combat. Yes, relax Pathfinder players, I already prefaced with this, I know you've got an action point system as well, and I adore it. With these action points, you can spend them on actions like attacking, grabbing, and shoving, or reactions like dodging, hiding, or disengaging from combat. You can also use them on movement or simply giving yourself advantage, which really gives you as the player the power to do more of what you want on your turn. Manage to get yourself in another drunken tavern brawl and just want to save all your action points on dodging incoming uncoordinated fists flying your way? Go right ahead. On top of this, there's a hugely reworked martial system for all the martial-based characters to utilize, which introduces things like a stamina point system, techniques, weapon properties, and maneuvers, which, again, really allow for some incredibly unique and engaging opportunities in combat instead of, I swing my sword 3 times. I do get that some people like that, it's just cool to have options. You also constantly get rewarded for rolling high, which is an amazing premise unless you can never seem to roll above an 8. What do you want me to do about that? These rewards for high rolls in DC20 use a buy 5 system, so if you roll 5 higher than what you needed to, you deal more damage or succeed better. For example, let's say you were trying to investigate something and it required an 8 and you rolled a 13, you might find it extra information or a magical hairbrush with unknown properties that for some unbeknownst reason is stained with a lot of blood. Spellcasting in DC20 uses mana points to cast, customize, and empower your spells, which I personally find to be a lot cleaner of a way of managing what you're doing as compared to spell slots. When it comes to actually casting a spell in DC20, you make a spell check. Similarly to the reward system, the higher you roll, the more damage that your potential fireball will deal, or your healing spell will heal. Who's taking a healing spell when you can cast huge fireballs? Similar to Dungeon Crawl Classics, you have the ability to combo up spells with your allies, with the small caveat that they need to know how to cast the spell as well, which is a terrifying premise for an all-wizard party. Oh, also, all spellcasters get a reaction to have their magic collide with another spellcaster in midair in a spell duel, which is just, it should be absolutely canon in anything that has spellcasters. I really could go on and on about DC20. I've absolutely loved my time with it, and hey, I probably will in future videos as I play more of the system, but if you want to check out more of what I've said or learn more information, check out the link to the Kickstarter in my description or the pinned comment. Now for my most recent love, Shadow of the Demon Lord. I don't even really know where to start with this one. This game is the epitome of dark fantasy. Like, for some people, it's a lot, it's kind of edgy, gory, it's funny in a twisted way, it's very up my alley. Perfect example, if a spell like Hateful Defecation isn't something that's up your alley, this probably isn't for you. The premise of most dark fantasy games is that the heroes are ultimately rather inconsequential and the world is very shit around them and they can't really impact that, but in Shadow of the Demon Lord, they can. Yes, that'll be incredibly hard and you'll need to band together with a group of very powerful people to do so, but nothing's impossible in this very depressing world. I'm learning more and more that I'm really enjoying and loving systems that kind of emphasize randomness and stupidity in the outcomes of the characters you're getting, and Shadow of the Demon Lord does this perfectly. Similarly to DCC, it encourages the use of random tables which you can use to quickly generate an interesting character. Being entirely dependent on the randomization of these tables can lead to some imbalances, like me and my friend played in a game where I was an incredibly wealthy individual who had several guards and multiple dozen horses, and He was a slightly insane, kind of disfigured gentleman, and we kind of just got along with things in that vibe, but you might not necessarily want that. You do not at all have to just stay with what's randomized. There's a lot of easy fixes you can change based on what you roll, and just do rerolls if you really want to, but I find the goofier, the better, especially in this grim, dark world. One thing I really wasn't sure about when I first started off playing was the simple fact that starting characters don't have a lot of room for customization in terms of their classes or special powers, because you start at level 0 very simply. You can only pick your ancestry really, which is your race in D&D. It's a very old school RPG premise where you kind of start off as a nobody and then you can go down the paths inside of Shadow of the Demon Lord to pick what kind of class you want to build out as you go. Level 1, you get the option of branching out into a magician, priest, rogue, or warrior. As you get down to level 3, there's expert paths for each of these options you previously chose. And then finally, at level 7, there's a master path for that decision you made. Each level as you progress down these very personalized paths give you access to choosing new spells, accessing new weapons, or picking new professions. There's also a max level cap of 10, which I've never actually got to, but seems fine enough, I guess. Things I love the most about Shadow of the Demon Lord are the very aesthetic rules and systems it has in place, like insanity and corruption. As mentioned previously, you might roll a bad hand and your character just starts off a bit insane, which causes them to see or perceive things a bit differently. There's also things that can happen to them in-game to cause them to become even more insane. On the other side of the spectrum is corruption. It's there to try and encourage the players to abstain from murder and theft, because they accumulate too much corruption, they'll quickly become demons. Just to be clear, you can absolutely play as a demon, they just die a lot more often than non-demons, and they cannot be resurrected. Does this mean that thieves and murderers are very rare in this world? Not really. Is it going to totally prevent murder hobos? Also, probably not. But there's consequences for it. Also, one thing I love having a huge playgroup is that combat is really fast and gritty and also deadly. Attacking is really straightforward, and also taking damage equal to your health gives you a 1 in 6 chance of dying per turn. The rest of the system acts very D&D, but not in a negative way at all. There's so much different and varied in how it presents itself that have those kind of comforts of what I'm familiar with in 5th edition makes the whole system just work incredibly. Now, just a few rapid fire honorable mentions, because I couldn't not include these. 13th Age. Now, everyone tells me this is great and I need to try it, and I promise you, if you've played it and think it's great, I will. I just haven't had the chance to do it yet, but it is on the to-do list, and I think it'll be good just from everyone who's recommending it to me. The Root TTRPG. You play as woodland creatures fighting for money, justice, and freedom from powers greater than any of them, and I'm completely obsessed with the board game, and this just kind of fits in with the whole aesthetic perfectly. Shadow Dark. I can't lie, I actually haven't played this one either, but Bob says it's very good, and I've got all the free printed out material, and I'll be running that in the next few weeks, so I think it's almost a lock into being pretty fun. Blades in the Dark. I've only played this 3 times, and I've had the most, like, little rascal energy fun time every time I've played it. Essentially, you play as like a group of scoundrels who are, trying to seek their fortune on the haunted streets of it's like a industrial fantasy city. It's big, sneaky, cheeky kind of guy energy, and I'm here for that. And honestly, probably my most played alternative TTRPG, Call of Cthulhu. It's a Lovecraftian horror mystery. It's just not high fantasy or at all like any of these systems, and it just really didn't fit in here. I'll do a separate video on it at some point. I've played it too much and there's too much to talk about there, but I just had to give it a little shout out because I love it. But hey, I'm sure I've missed a solid 43 different systems that you enjoy that I've just never heard of, so let me know what you're playing so I can add it to this ever-growing stack of books that I don't have time to read or consume that are just slowly filling this entire 2x2 prison that I reside in.